Hi and welcome to this week's GMBN Tech Show. We've got an absolutely loaded show for you this week. So on the show we've got electronic wireless suspension adjustment from SRAM, which is absolutely amazing. We've got arguably the world's toughest D-lock, U-lock, whatever you want to call it, from Hiplok. We're going to talk about that quite a lot. Some new stuff from Commencal, some awesome tools and a load of other great stuff. Okay, so straight into the show, and we're not going to have a topic this week because I'm probably going to be guilty of talking quite a lot about some of the cool stuff on the show, starting with this new wireless electronic suspension adjustment system from SRAM and RockShox. It's part of the AXS system and it's called Flight Attendant. I mean, it's a pretty cool name. I guess you could do pre-flight checks before you go riding and a whole bunch of other crazy buzzwords. But I just want to talk a little bit about what it does before we go into too much. Now, also today, yesterday in fact, there were a bunch of bikes released with the system on. So you're going to see a selection of images of a Canyon Neuron, a Canyon Spectral, YT Capra, YT GFC. There's a Trek as well. Let me just check here. Trek Slash and a Specialized Enduro. And of course we had the Charles Murray Pro bike with the black box version of this very same system that went out yesterday. So if you want to see it and hear from Charles on how it rides and stuff, check that video out. The link to that is going to be in the description underneath. Right, but here's all the cool stuff. Right, so you have on the fork, you have what they call the control module. On the shock, you have another one of those. You have a sensor that's in the bottom bracket axle, and they communicate together. Okay, so as the fork hits an impact, it's understanding how fast, like the velocity of the impact is, and it can dial in the amount of damping needed for that. Adding to the equation, you've got the sensor in the cranks. It knows when you're pedaling, when you're freewheeling, when to apply more damping or not. Now, don't get me wrong, with this system, it's not just a fixed system, it's part of the AXS family after all, so you can chop and change things around as you like. For example, with the compression settings on the rear shock, you can have it biased towards a firmer feel or a softer feel. There's just so much cool stuff going on with this. I absolutely love it. So there's going to be loads of shots firing up on screen now, way better than looking at my ugly mug. You want to be looking at this cool new tech. Right, so I'm just going to go through this. So think of it as kind of along a similar line to what Fox have done with their live system, and to a degree the EI system that RockShox did way back. We'll talk about that a bit later. But there's no need to use the lockout switches anymore. You can, of course, use the AXS touch point. So it's a new left-hand touch point that's got a dual button on it. So you can still use the dropper post and you can operate the fork and the shock remotely, manually if you want to, or you can have it in a fully automatic mode, or I guess a semi-automatic mode where it does a bit of both and you can override it. So there's literally settings for everyone. And just think what it does. So over time, it's going to learn your riding patterns, it's going to learn the gears that you use, how hard you pedal, and it's going to start being able to make intelligent decisions. I mean, that's my speculation on what's going to happen down the line, but the whole point of the AXS system is that it learns what's going on the bike. So this is just an intelligent system straight out. Now, I've got to say, look at it like Spectral, for example, right here on screen. Side-on view, look how clean it looks, right? So you've got the module on the fork, and the shock has a little module on there. But other than that, there's no other wires, so you've just got the brake lines. That is it. Fully wireless everywhere else, and I think that looks absolutely incredible for the cutting edge tech seen on a mountain bike today. I really do. I think this is amazing. There's actually something I want to give a big shout out to Wheelbased on Instagram. I always shout out to those guys. There's a handle at the bottom of the screen there, and there's a link to his Instagram in the description underneath. So he's actually been teasing sort of patents about this sort of stuff for some time now, and he's had some really interesting thoughts on it. So definitely worth reading what they've been writing about that stuff. So there's a safe mode. You probably want to know about that. So if your battery is at a critical level, it returns the system to fully open. So not ideal if you've got like a massive mountain to climb, but it's a safe setting. Fully open is much better than mid or fully closed, because if you have to ride rough terrain, of course, you've got a suspension system to help you there. There's loads of settings available to customize. There's override, there's bias adjust, which I referenced, so you can have it on a softer lockout or a firmer lockout. You can adjust those parameters. There's three settings essentially, like all RockShox RCT3 systems, so open, trail, and closed. Now there's 10 position low speed compression adjustable from the app or the controller. So you can adjust it with a micro adjust button from the lever, so you can adjust your compression settings, or you can adjust that from the app itself, which is on your phone. Now for the fork, so here's some fork options for you. You've got Pike, Lyric and Zeb options in this. Now they've actually been rebuilt. They've got a load of other new features on them. And one of them I want to talk about is called Buttercups. Now essentially, imagine this is suspension for the suspension, if you imagine that. So back in the day, we used to have elastomer rubber as the spring unit in our forks. So if you think, imagine taking a coil spring out and filling it full of a special type of rubber. Pretty much how suspension used to work. Now they've got some kind of rubber bumper. It's going to be, I mean, they say a special rubber puck. And what do they say about it? So a special rubber puck that can absorb 20% of vibration that would normally be transmitted to the rider. So this puck sits in between the damping rod and the bottom of the fork, essentially. So any of that vibration, the damper and the air unit just simply cannot move that fast. It's vibration, after all, is absorbed by that. So you're going to feel even less at the hands. Now that's really smart. I really like the idea of that, and I can't wait, if nothing else, to feel how that is. I reckon that's going to be a really good thing. So they call them low aptitude pucks. Yeah, suspension for your suspension. The forks also have pressure relief valves on them. We've seen this on Fox, and we've seen this over the years. In fact, the old pace forks up there, they call it atmospheric balanced. They basically had holes in them so the air could just come out. You get pressure build up sometimes. It doesn't always happen. It's not going to happen to me in British winter riding a 5-minute descent, but it might happen to you riding a 35-minute descent in a bike park. When you get pressure build up, the fork starts to spike almost because it can't compress as it should do. You bleed the air out using those ports. I believe the air can come out itself, but you can also manually push those in as well. Interestingly, they've got stiffness reducers as part of their system. Now, this is something I've not seen, and I don't know what I think about this, to be honest. So you might be aware of the torque cap system that many people actually don't even use. So the torque cap system, they have these bigger caps with a bigger interface from that 15mm axle onto the forks to give you more stiffness. Now, they say it gives you 5% extra stiffness. I mean, I've had loads of RockShox forks that have had a torque cap system, and I've never actually bothered using the torque caps. Early on when I was doing product reviews, I did, of course, running them back to back, and yes, you can definitely notice the stiffness. But you don't have to run them. It just means it's a bit more of a pain to line up the front wheel when you put it in, because it doesn't slot into place. Now, they do another set of adapters that mean you don't get the additional stiffness, so they're calling them stiffness reducers. I'm genuinely confused about this because it seems you get the same thing by just not using torque caps. But hey, I've not seen these things in the flesh. I just think it's a very odd thing for them to have in their press release. But those rubber pucks, I think the buttercup system, I genuinely think that's a really, really good thing. RockShox onto something. Now with the shock, you have the flight attendant motor module. You can see that on screen. So you've got the Super Deluxe Ultimate Flight Attendant, 3-position RC T3 damper on there. Again, it's controllable automatically, or you can adjust this through the access touch points at your bars. Crank sensor sits in the axle when you're pedaling. Now the full product lineup in the series, you've got Pike, Lyric and Zeb, and you get the Pike in 27.5 and 29, 120, 130, 140mm travel. The Lyric, 27.5, 29, 140, 150, 160mm travel. And the Zeb, again, in both wheel sizes, 150 up to 190mm travel. There's cranks, XX1 and XO1, 30-tooth chainrings up to 36 in 2-teeth increments. And crank lengths are 165 up to 175 in 5mm increments. And all the usual bottom bracket offerings there. As I say, there's that new Access left-hand touch point, which you can see on screen. Now it just has a little extra nubbin on the side there. As I said, there's a selection of bikes with this technology on available at the moment. And I'm just blown away. I think this is really, really, really forward thinking for SRAM to actually get to this point. And you kind of, if you think about where wireless technology is going, it's just like, why would you not have this? You know, I've got a coil shock on my Canyon Spectral currently, and I've got a cable operated remote at the bar. The amount of time I look at it and just think, it just annoys me because I've got an Access rear derailleur with no cable from it at all. So I love the concept of where this is going. I really, really am interested in feeling it. But I've also got to say, especially those buttercups, that's doing it for me. What do you think? Electronic wireless shifting. Of course, it's electronic wireless shifting, electronic wireless suspension adjustment. It's not going to be for everyone. It's going to cost a fair bit of money. I don't have the pricing currently. It will be released any time now. I might jump the gun a bit in the time that I filmed this compared to when the release goes live. But I'm mega interested in it. I think it's really cool. The bike looks amazing. But where can you go from here? I mean, it's not logical at all, but the only way you can go would be to get rid of the brake hoses. Please don't do that though. That would be absolutely terrifying. But it can be done. People have done fly-by-wire brakes before. I believe it's done in some race cars and stuff like that. So maybe we'll see that in our time on bikes. But I actually hope not. I like having some sort of connection between a brake lever, pushing some fluid to a piston that actually mechanically works. Makes sense to me. It's voodoo magic, this other stuff. Okay, next up then. Right, Hiplok have released the angle grinder proof lock. It's got a D1000, this is it, right here. It just looks like a D-lock or a U-lock. It's pretty flipping heavy, it's rubber coated, and they say this is potentially the world's toughest lock. Okay, so it's using what they call FerroSafe, which is an anti-cutting technology. Now, I've got to read some of this out because this is just wicked new tech. So on screen, you're going to see some details of the lock. So it's a diamond solder secure. So normally you see up to gold level. So to see diamond level, that really does say something about it. So diamond solder secure for both motorcycles and bicycles. Super good. And what Hiplok say is, FerroSafe is a graphene reinforced ceramic composite, a high-performing patented material. It's been specifically designed to disintegrate angle grinder cutting blades and carbide tip drills with its unique combination of material properties. So it's got a square profiled hardened steel core, and it has the FerroSafe over the top, and then it has rubber over the top of that. And then add to that the fact the thing is built like an absolute tank. This thing is seriously weighty. They do offer a sort of like a pouch to mount this onto your bike to, or to carry it with. The whole point of Hiplok originally was that you could wear their locks. Obviously they've gone for maximum security with this one. Now they say that this one lasted for 10 minutes of constant angle grinder use versus another market leader at a very high level, which lasted 20 seconds. That's quite something. Now, I had a little look around, so there's a lot of information on the Kickstarter page. You can get discounts on these pre-release. I haven't got the full retail price, but on the Kickstarter page, you get a load of discount options if you're interested in getting one of these pre-release. To be honest, if I didn't have this one in my hand, this one is a sample, I'm not even sure if this is a fully working one, but I'm tempted myself because they do sound really good. Now, I looked at a review on Gear Junkie. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Gear Junkie, but they literally test things to death. And they did a review on this lock, and it's a proper product review. They absolutely destroyed this thing. They did get through it, but what it took to get through it is quite amazing. I'm actually going to put a link to that review in the description underneath. It's a non-bike related site. I think you should have a look at it because you'd be quite surprised. They attacked it using every major method. And what they say is they ended up using the angle grinder, and they went through 5 discs, a minute on each disc to do that. So you've got to changing your disc time as well. So potentially you got 10 minutes there of constant angle grinder use, and they only got through one side. They still couldn't get through the rest of the lock because of the square-sided, the U profile of the lock. And then they tried to angle grind through the main body, and they couldn't even get through that. They smashed off all the casing and stuff, and there's even video clips of it. And I think that is amazing. If you've got a good bike or a bike that you really love, lock it up. Like a couple £100 on a lock or whatever these are going to cost at retail price, it's really not much if your bike is £1,000, £2,000, 5, 6, 7, whatever it costs. Look after your bikes. I think that is going to be an awesome bit of kit. Look out for it, and please do have a watch of the videos of the guy smashing this to pieces. I'm quite impressed by that. I think it's a really, really good bit of kit. So if you want a good lock, they're coming out soon, or you can get involved early on the Kickstarter, which is going to be in the link underneath. Right, next up, Santa Cruz Chameleon. The original do-it-all hardtail is back. I love the Chameleon. So I've never actually had a Chameleon. I kind of had the cheap version. I had a DMR Trailstar 4130 steel, awesome bike, absolutely loved that. But a Chameleon was from America. It was made from aluminium. It had fairly generic geometry. You could ride cross country on it. You could set up single speed and turn it into a town bike. You could get a small frame. It'd be a dirt jump bike. Literally the most versatile thing ever. And it's back. And they've launched this really cool campaign with 5 different build-ups. So there's a load of shots on screen of different riders. There's bike packing setups, there's single speed setups, there's someone hitting some dirt jumps and shredding a bike like a hardcore hardtail. It's literally, you can do whatever you want with it, which is kind of cool. It really goes with the name Chameleon. I've always loved the bikes. I think they're really, really cool. And there's something about hardtail. I always suggest that a hardtail is something great for anyone to learn skills on. I'm not going to be antiquated and say that everyone should start on a hardtail, but it will definitely learn you skills that you can't just get straight away on a full suspension bike. And more to the point, it teaches you places where you just can't get away with riding in a certain way. So from that perspective, a hardtail is still a really relevant thing. And it's actually kind of made me want a hardtail again, because I just don't have one, because I feel like I've moved on. But actually, maybe, sometimes a little slap in the face is quite a good thing to sort of keep you in check. And a hardtail winter bike, well, it might be the ideal thing. We'll see. Watch this space on that. So some details on the bike. So you can see some shots of the frame and some build-ups. You might be spotting here, it's got different size wheels on it as well. So jump it, backcountry it, single speed it, bike pack it, race it. Literally do anything on this bike, which is a great thing. Can be run 29-inch or mixed wheel setup, so with a 27.5 rear wheel. Geometry adjustable via the dropouts there, so you can genuinely tune that geometry. It also means you can run it single speed, which is great. It's geared up around 130mm fork. Of course, you could probably run it slightly taller, like a 140, and probably slightly less if you wanted to have it, you know, a bit more agile feeling. Alloy frame, triple cargo bolts on the down tube there, small through to XL sizing, 74.1 degree seat angle, 65 degree head angle, and the chainstay is adjustable 425 to 437. That is a wicked bike. Tell me otherwise. I think that is a really, really cool bike. It's always been there, and it's just a bit more updated. Nice one, Santa Cruz. Right, okay, another brand offering mixed wheel sizes, Commencal. Now, I've got to say, Commencal produce probably some of the coolest bikes. If you're just going to be superficial about it, they've got the thing, haven't they? I'm sure you will agree with me here. So they've got the Meta SX and the Meta Power. That's the e-bike version. We'll show you a shot of it, but they're probably going to talk about it on the EMBN show, so we don't need to talk about it here. Now, they say they've spent 3 years working on this concept with their downhill team. They've tried different chassis, different prototypes, different wheel size iterations, and now they're in a place where they feel like, yep, we've nailed this. This is it. Here is the one. So here it is on screen in a few different iterations with different builds. I've got to say, that one with the Öhlins shock and fork. Oh my God, how good does that look? Just so nice. Obviously, I like the same size wheels, but I can still appreciate the use of having a smaller rear wheel, and I'm sure some of you will as well. So small through to XL, 64 degree head angle, 78.5 degree seat angle. Chainstay is 442 on the small and the medium, 447 on the large and the extra large. Great, so it's proportional for the size. Reach 440 to 510. They actually shrunk it 10mm per size when they put the smaller rear wheel on, because they found it just balanced the bike that bit better. So they've not just like shrunk the back end and put a different wheel in, they've really thought about the overall geometry. So the frame features double row, this is a new feature, double row enduro bearings for improved use, and of course stiffness, support and longevity. And it's got flip chip on the shock yoke, not the yoke shock, for geometry change. So loads of good things going on there. So there's all these different versions. So there's the SX Öhlins edition. Oh yeah, put me down for one of those bad boys. That's €5,799. The signature edition, that's this one with a fox on there, 5,999. Then you've got all these other spec versions. You've got Team, Essential, Ride and Origin, and they vary for the Origin at 2,999 up to the Team Edition at 5,199. So there is a build for everyone. Really, I mean, not everyone, because they're still fairly expensive in the base one, but 2,999, you get a lot of bike for the money. It's a very cool bike as well. I think they're cool. And here's a shot of the e-bike as well, the Meta Power. It does look really good, I've got to say. I'm a fan of an e-bike, but I'm well aware that we've got a whole show dedicated to that. So if you want to hear about the e-bikes, there'll be a link to the EMBN show down there somewhere. Okay, so let's jump into some comments from last week's show, and in particular relating to things wearing out. I mean, there were loads and loads of comments. Firstly, I just want to say, sorry, I don't know when link glide and other stuff is going to be available. I'm getting different information from different sources. By all means, I will send out some more emails to some of my industry contacts and see what they have to say. But I'm sorry, I'm not a bike shop. I really can't advise too much on that. I'll do what I can, and I'm well aware how frustrating it is for everyone out there that's desperate for bike stuff. But hey, we're all together. We're not like alone in this. So now some comments. So Project X3 said, mixed conditions, clean the lube every 150k. Bikes are stored indoors all the time. Cassette lasts 10kk, so 10,000 kilometers, with 3 chains, 1 front chainring. That's pretty flipping good. Brake pads sintered last a year typically, riding most hilly areas, so on the end of the cassette usually, 75,000 meters ascent per year. Tyres top XC compound last 2 years, but I like new tyres, so swapping them more often. Basically most components are 2 years for me. That sounds pretty reasonable, I think, and certainly judging by how much you seem to be riding, so that's really good. CB says, thanks Mr. Dodd, I tried the 2-to-1 cassette to chain ratio and it's been close. Tyres depend on the weather and surface. Brake pads, weather and type. I ride off-road on an old rail bed, so it's a lot of crushed stone which eats components, jockey wheels, chains, etc. Well, good for you if that's working out for you. It doesn't always work for people, but you can if you're, if you actually want to spend out a bit earlier on a chain and keep on top of the chain checking. Yeah, you can save money. David King said, I find that my Gates belt drive, oh here we go, and internal geared hub is near perfect. Stands up to rain, sand, mud, never needs lubing, don't need to spend any time on cleaning or lubing, no chain stretch, no cassette, no jockey wheel issues, no hanger to bed, no direct, yeah, all right, fair enough. 8,000 plus kilometers on the current drivetrain and going strong. Just have to check my tyre pressure from time to time. Just ride my bike, not worry about nursing it. What am I supposed to say to that? That's the dream, isn't it? And one last comment from Joshua Doss says, I think the first mullet was the penny farthing. Yeah, you would be right. But it wasn't a mountain bike, was it? I was referring to mountain bikes. And if I didn't say that, my bad, you called me out on that. I think someone else did as well. But yeah, penny farthing was. I've never ridden one of those. I'd quite like to have a go on just because of how ridiculous they are. You don't want to go over the bars though, do you? How that high up. Good stuff from everyone. Right, quiz time now then. Okay, so three questions coming at you on screen. First one, Commencal bikes have a rich racing history. But before the brand Commencal, what bikes was Max Commencal producing? Next up, what was Santa Cruz Bike's first full suspension bike that was not a single pivot? So you remember they did the Tasman, they did the Heckler, even did the Bullet as a single pivot. What was their first bike that was not a single pivot? And RockShox has previously released a kind of electronic suspension system enabling sort of automatic shock lockout. What was it called and what brands famously used it? Pick that one up a bit later on. Okay, so next up in the show then, I was having a bit of a sort out at home in my bike cave, and it just made me think there's a few tools that I just really love, and I'd like to know what your favourite tools are, and I'm just going to show you a few of mine right now. These flush cut snips. It's probably the most simple thing in the world. These ones are Park, and they literally cut completely flush. Great if you're putting a mud guard on your bike or you're doing your cable routing. Everyone should have a set of flush cut snips. Just a brilliant tool. You know how I feel about Nipex. Man, these things are just absolutely amazing. So this is the 180 in length, locking adjustable plier. They're just phenomenal. You can actually put shock bushes in with these as well. Not bushes, you can actually put the hardware in without damaging anything because they're machine surfaces. It's almost like a vice. Just a beautiful piece of kit. I recommend everyone get a set of these. Don't know what size is going to suit you. I always thought the larger size was the best one, the 250s, which I've had for years. But actually, since I got the 180, that's the one I use all the time. Speaking of shocks, simple steel shock bush tool. Now, this has sat in a drawer for a while. In fact, this is a new one, I lie. The old one sat in a drawer for a while, but part of it was missing, so I couldn't use it. So to buy this one from TF Tuned. Now, I haven't actually done shock hardware for such a long time, but recently I've fitted a coil shock to my Spectral. There's a shot of it on screen. And also, I had to fit and set up the shock and also fit and set up an air shock for video. So I kind of used the tool a fair bit and just thought, man, like, that's absolutely essential. You can't do it without. All right, you could do it with sockets, but you're going to mess things up at some point. Digital shock gauge, digital tyre pressure gauge. Get yourself one. Free grip, you're missing out on it. I use this all the time, and actually at the weekend I went out riding on a cross-country bike with a new set of tyres on there, which will be released soon. And the tyres were amazing, but it took me a long time because they're very different in the construction of them to get to good tyre pressure, and using that was absolutely key. Pipe cutter, all right, when I'm at work in the GMBN Tech set, I use the proper Park saw guide and a hacksaw to cut through and then file them. But when I'm at home, I go for the ease of a pipe cutter. Fresh blade, never go too much, rather rotate more rather than put too much pressure because you don't want to sort of bell out the end of the tube that you're cutting, but these things are amazing, and you've even got one of these to work around and smooth it off on the inside. Brilliant, really, really good tool, especially good if you're a traveling mechanic to have one of those. Handlebar holder. I've actually got the old school version of this at home, which is pretty terrible. This one is adjustable in length to suit different top tubes. It's got a simple rubber system, goes around your bars and your seat post. If you work on a bike at home, at some point you'll have had the bars moving around and you find it's really annoying. Just get one of them. It's a brilliant piece of kit. Could not put the glamour in, could I? Beautifully made for us by Rollingdale Cycles. It's a titanium hammer for fine work. Really nice, really sort of spongy rubber, soft end on there for delicate work. And it's finished by the amazing team titanium finishing. I can't say enough about the quality of this. If you're looking for a present for someone, or perhaps a present for yourself, something like that, or getting something finished by titanium finishing, I'd put it at the top of your list, because that really is just a thing of beauty. Yes, you don't need it. How much do you want one though? Amazing piece of kit. And the last one, nothing really to do with the workshop, but this is a multi-tool I've had for years. This one's a Leatherman, and I remember previously I had, I think it was a Gerber, that I had probably had for 10 years or so, and it went walkies. So it's just a pliers multi-tool, nothing fancy. It's got a leather pouch, it goes in a bike bag when I go on trips, it goes in my bag on a daily basis. It's just mega useful. It's got Allen key bits on there, it's just got stuff that you use. I just think everyone should have some kind of like non-bike specific multi-tool. But there we go, enough of me waffling. What are your favourite tools? Come on, get in the comments underneath. What can't you live without? I mean, I can live without these, but I absolutely love them. They're probably my favourites to use. Love to hear from you in the comments underneath. Right, quiz answer time. How did you get on? Bit trickier, I think, this week, hopefully, because I think the questions seemed to be a bit easy last week, judging by what some of you were saying in the comments. So, Commencal bikes have a rich racing history, but before the brand Commencal, what bikes was Max Commencal producing? Sun. Remember the Sun Chippy team? Do you remember the Sun Radical Plus downhill bike? Probably the most progressive downhill bike of all time. I don't mean in how the suspension felt, I mean in what the suspension bike was doing. Some that raced it, like Nicolas Voulet and Fabien Barel back in the day, insist it was still like just decades ahead of its time. And actually, other than the fact it's 26-inch wheels and it's quite heavy and stuff now, it will probably still perform quite well these days. Let's not forget, they sponsored some of the most influential racers of all time. So Fabien obviously rode one, Cedric Gracia, Nicolas Voulet, and Caroline Chasson, Francois Gachet, just the list goes on. Incredible talent from there, and obviously that talent now has gone elsewhere, but the talent with the bike brand has gone into Commencal. I think we all know how good they are, don't we? Next up, what was Santa Cruz Bike's first full suspension bike that was not a single pivot? Now, I would have said V10, but I'd be wrong. It was actually the Blur. The Blur and the V10 were both shown to the press in 2001 for a 2002 model year release, but we're talking like a month or so apart. The Blur came out fractionally first, and I think a few people were like, cool, it's an efficient suspension cross-country bike. But when the V10 came out, I think that's the one everyone knows Santa Cruz for launching, it was a 10-inch travel bike. 10-inch travel that pedalled better than most 4-inch travel bikes at the time, and it really was a groundbreaking bike. Thank you, Santa Cruz, for developing that, and also thank you, Jeff Stieber at Intense Cycles, for working parallel with Intense on the VPP system, because it is just brilliant. And that's also not forgetting Outland, where the actual system came from in the first place. In fact, there's a really cool shot of Brian Lopes on screen from his Instagram riding on a Mongoose, which was actually an Outland. I never knew that he had one of those. I think that's really cool just to see, and great to see that he acknowledges Outland and the VPP. Right, and last one, RockShox has previously released an electronic lockout system. What was it called, and what brand bikes used it? It was the EI system. I can't remember what that stood for, to be honest, and it came out in 2012. So I think it was previewed either 2012 or maybe 2011, I forget. I was in Leger for the press launch of that. And we rode Lapierre bikes with it on, but there was also Ghost and High bikes there, but Lapierre were the ones that famously pushed it. Now, it's a really cool system. So from what I remember, it used to have a sort of an accelerometer system inside the fork. I mean, this was wired. You'd have a control unit and handlebars, so you could adjust the settings how you wanted. It'd have a battery somewhere on the down tube. It had a sensor in the crank, so it could tell when you're pedaling, when you're not. And it had a little servo on the shock. And you could hear it going, and like fractions of a second, it could adjust stuff quicker than you could ever think of adjusting. And given how basic, no offense RockShox, but how basic the suspension was then compared to now, it worked really, really well. And I'd actually say, a bit of speculation here, based on the flight attendant system they've just launched, right? So the EI system worked phenomenally, but I think there were other issues why it didn't go into long-term production and didn't go across brands. Perhaps cost, perhaps other factors there with like cable routing and stuff like that that the industry wasn't ready for. But given how well it worked with what were fairly basic shock absorbers back then, I'm going to go on a limb and say flight attendant is going to be absolutely outstanding as a racing aid. I think that is just going to be fantastic. Of course, a lot of people who buy that stuff are just going to buy it and enjoy it whenever, but I think that's going to be a really, really good product because RockShox suspension these days is absolutely on the money. So I'm really excited to see where this tech goes, and hopefully it excites some of you as well. Give Give us some comments from the show underneath, as usual. Love you all for hanging around so much. It makes my job so much nicer. We love having you. See you later. See you in the next one.